With 105 days to go, and by the way, we're now at day 40, guess what happened? We said, we got no campaign runway. And so we turned around, we talked, we prayed, we thought, and he said, you know what? A campaign runway is what you would do. And I remember that when I was with the National Party, we'd start off at 12 months, right? And then you release one policy, then you release another policy, then you go out. And now at the moment, people are campaigning. They're going out and cutting ribbons and kissing your babies and shaking your hands and telling you about what they're going to do for you and for this and so forth. And so that's what they do leading up to the election. We don't have that. So guess what we said? We're going to shoot a rocket. That's our campaign strategy. We're just going to go up. And isn't it amazing? It changed the attitude. Because now we're not trying to sort of go this way. We're just going to go up. And so what does that mean? Let's come up with rocket strategies. And so here was one of the first rocket strategies. Every political party does a flyer. They call it a DLE. We're writing a book. It's a simple book, but it's a powerful book. We've had people come along and say that when you compare this to all the other flyers that are there, they say, wow, isn't this amazing? And do you like the colours? Yes. The colours pop. They do. And the most important thing, they're colours that actually women like. And I'll tell you why that makes a difference. When I was with the National Party, we struggled to find colours. Did you notice that some political parties use pink? Because they think like, oh, that's what women will like. And I think, wow. I've talked to a lot of other women. We haven't said, no, not really. Not necessarily. But when there's a colour that has a meaning to it, and what I love about this, if you Google and you say, Google colour of Zeal, do you know what it comes up with? This colour. It's called Pacific Jade. And so the colour, the feel, the book, the priorities, we put them all in there. And what we found is this. People are more likely to pick up a book than they are to read a flyer. Go figure. But it happens. And along with that, we've also too got a team of young people that are also too getting us into social media, right? Because you have to. We have to get that message out here. It's a rocket strategy. And so we've got social media and so forth. We're on Instagram, LinkedIn, and a whole lot of other things. And I remember my young son rang me up and said, Dad, my friend rang me and said, your dad's on TikTok. And I said, he said, what? Please tell me my dad wasn't dancing on TikTok. And he goes, no, he wasn't. What was he doing? He said that he's a leader of this NewZeal Party. And he goes, and what did you do? And he said, check it out. So I checked it out on the website. And I joined. He's 23 years old, Dad, and he joined a party. Never joined any political party. So he said to him, why did you join? Because it seemed cool. It seemed right. And then he said, and then I invited my family. And what happened? And they joined. You know, all we know is that we're just going to shoot this rocket. We're going to reach out in many different ways that we believe are important. But here's the thing that's really interesting, right? Did you know that, and I learned this when I was in the Justice and Electoral Select Committee, this experience that I had, that we review every single election. Every election that we've had in this country, especially over the last 20 to 30 years, there's been on average 600 to 700,000 people who don't vote. They're enrolled, registered, but they just don't vote. So there's a massive pool out there waiting for people. We just got, someone today actually sent me a message and showed that someone had done the stats. I'm trying to find out what it is, but it said that actually there are about 240,000 Christians in churches who don't vote. Crazy. So what we're doing is that we're out there. We're shooting this rocket. We're getting around the country. And then we're getting a bit of fuel, because you need a bit of fuel to fuel up the rocket, and it's shooting up. And we're out, and we're going all around the country to meet wonderful people like yourself, to tell you about the things that we believe that we're called to, about the messages that we're giving as well, and telling you people about this new zeal as well. So ladies and gentlemen, now's your chance to ask me anything, right? Anything that you would like to ask, and then let's see how we go. Yes? Question from the back.
Congratulations on a great set of policies. From the outside, you've been in Parliament, but from the outside, a lot of these policies are just evil. For example, they want to get 12-year-olds to be able to consent to vaccinations and consent to sex change, and they really want people to go further and have them consent to sex acts and legalise paedophilia. The taking away of freedom of speech, all the climate policies, they're affecting Australia, Canada, Western European countries, and so from the outside, it looks like these are all coming from globalist organisations like World Economic Forum and UN and the WHO. Would you have a policy for dealing with those organisations as part of the government?
Yes, what you're saying is right. I mean, I've been over in Geneva. I've actually seen them. I was on a number of different committees called the IPCU. So we looked into what the United Nations were putting through, World Health Organization as well. Never went to the World Economic Forum and has a different sort of trajectory and where it affects different elements of this. But here's the thing that I would say, is that first of all, we need to reassert our sovereignty as a nation, right? That's really important. We don't have to sign up to everything and anything that's there. And even though we're a small island nation, right, and we have to be trading, right, we've already got relationships that are really important. So at the moment, the reasons that we're struggling is called all of our eggs as far as our trade is in one particular basket called China. Now, when I was with National and I was a cabinet minister, we had a thing called the TPP, which is called the Trans-Pacific Partnership. And that was to diversify our trade portfolio. You know, the amazing thing is that the Labour opposition at that time, they marched on the streets. They said, you're taking our sovereignty, this is evil and this is wrong. When they got into government, here's what they did. That document was 800 pages long. They added 3 pages and then they call it the CPTPP and made it sound like it was okay. So, in answering your question, I believe it's important. First of all, we need to have these relationships because as a small island nation, we need those particular relationships as far as our diplomatic affairs and our foreign affairs. But we don't have to sign up to some of the things that I believe are not right for us. So let's take, for instance, where the climate change. We signed in 2015 the Paris Accord, which then became the Kyoto Agreement. Out of that, they have a thing called SDGs, which is called Sustainable Development Goals. Now, all of a sudden, we're burdening ourselves with things we don't need to be burdened with. We have 80% renewable energy in New Zealand. Why then we're trying to get to 100%? We shouldn't, and we can't. We have the most emission-efficient farming in the world. Why are we all of a sudden trying to change and burden ourselves? We make only 0.2% of carbon emissions in the world. And now all of a sudden we're trying to say that, no, we've got to do our part. We're already doing our part. And so to me, that's what I believe is important. So for NewZeal, we see ourselves as a coalition partner to hold the bigger parties to account. To say that let's go back to some common sense and let's stop making this burden of blame upon all the people that are around there. And you are right. One of the things that I think is important is that people bandy all of these bits out and then they call it, everyone likes to call it, oh, you're just a conspiracy theorist. If you were to stand up in a public meeting, oh, it is a public meeting, but if you were to stand up and they heard you say what you said, you know what they said? Oh, you're just a conspiracy theorist. Now, the thing is, I'd say to you, there is truth in what you're saying, but don't chase the chicken down the rabbit hole. In other words, stay the course. Do you know what our course is? We need to change the government where it is at the moment. We need to have a minority party there to hold it to account. So you know what our course is? Chase this chicken. Put our effort into here and party vote for NewZeal so that we can become the party that holds the bigger government to account.
You just put your hand up, I'll bring it.
How can you work together with the other minor parties to become more powerful and unify that common cause, it seems, that runs through the majority of those minor parties that are on the side of freedom and they recognise some of these big key issues that are going on?
That's a really good question, and everywhere I go, everyone asks the same question, because at the moment there are about 20 minor parties that are all in that space, all trying to do the same thing with each other. So just to let you know that I've had lots of conversations with a number of them to talk about, is it possible to be able to work together? Now, in those conversations, we all want unity, but then there comes to a point that there may be some things we have in common, but there are other things that we don't. So I respect, and I said to them, well, let's still be respectful of each other, but at the moment, trying to come together actually can be difficult. Then other people turn around and say this, let's come under an umbrella, and it doesn't matter, we'll just get ourselves in, and then we'll just go off and do what we need to do, as long as we get in to make the change. So here's the experience that I've learned in talking to other parties where this has impacted them. You can be united in cause, but divided in purpose. See, cause can get you to the door, even get you inside the House of Parliament, but a unity of purpose is what will keep you there for the legacy of time. And I don't believe that it's right to be able to say to people, to ask for their trust in their vote, to turn around and say, just trust, get us in, and then once we get in, we may not be united, but at least we'll get in and change things. Now, in the history of our voting record in MMP in New Zealand, you'll know the names of the alliance, which was an alliance that happened before. We had Jim Manderton, we had Machirata with Mana Motahaki as well, and a number of them came together, social credit. They got in, but once they got in, they dispersed. They never stayed together. People would say, but it doesn't matter as long as they got in. Surely we can do better than that. Yeah. Surely we have to be better than that. And so all I'm saying is this. All I know is this. I'm going to stay the course, what I believe is important. Stand on the things that are there. Never disrespect other people in what they're saying. Because at the moment, I tell you this now, politics is getting ugly. You may have seen that in the New Zealand Herald, the NZCTU, the New Zealand Council of Trade Union, sponsored an ad which talked about Chris Luxon. And then all of a sudden, actually, if you look closer, they've photoshopped that his face looks like Robert Muldoon. Why are we getting to that? Here's what's happening now. This is where politics gets ugly. But I go one step further. Having been in the political arena, you have to be robust. Pretty conversations are not what you need. You need honest conversations. And sometimes you need to say to some of those small minor parties, the truth is, your day is done, your season has come to an end, your brand has been burnt. And as hard as people say, how can you say that? Well, you just need to look at what your reality is. Because you're entering into a place where you can't just be nice. You have to be truthful, but also respectful. Because that's the reality of what you're heading into. Because I can tell you this now, the public will rip you apart. They already are. As soon as you step up, they'll look at you, judge you, condemn you for everything else. Now that's a certain part of the public, and especially the media, that they create. But you know, most New Zealanders and Kiwis, actually they don't want to buy into that. But that's what's happening at the moment. So I, like you, would wish to have unity. I've had conversations, but at the end of the day, they choose to actually still pursue the course in which they're heading on, but we should always still respect one another as well. You guys are all very quiet, by the way.
I just want to know more about the healthcare system because it's very broken down at the moment. So I want to know the changes that will take place.
Sorry.
About healthcare,
Yep.
nurses and doctors and all that.
Yeah.
The
So
changes that will be made.
yeah. So one of the things that inside our booklet here you'll see, and sorry we didn't have it on the slides because we're having to readjust the slides to there, but we do talk about healthcare. That's really important. So we've talked about practitioners and people who are inside the health system. So the first thing, and I'll tell you this interesting one. So there's someone that's currently inside the health system who said to me, here's the advice that he believes that's important. And it's a strange word. He said the word honour. At the moment, there's a character of honour that's not inside our health system. And I said, explain to me that. Now, he's a CFO, a Chief Financial Officer that's in there. He said, Alfred, we're not honouring our healthcare workers, our doctors and our nurses. At the moment, the pressure that they are on. Here's the other thing that's happened, right? Under the current government and where they've led us to, I'll say it up front, it's a socialist agenda, ideology. And so here's what a socialist agenda and ideology works on. It works on a principle of power and control. And the way it works out from a governmental point of view, it's called centralisation. So we took 20 DHBs, district health boards around the country, and we decided to make them all into one Because why? Because they said bigger is better with two parts. That's what they did. And here's the crazy thing. They did it in a time during a pandemic when people were suffering. They had people who are healthcare workers who were mandated, doctors and nurses who could have been able to be part of the system who are now not able to. So here's the view that we have. Let's go back to making sure it's localised. Let's go back to making sure that the system is honouring to the people that are there. And I can tell you, the way the system is at the moment, it's broken. This is the words that they are telling us. I've got a good friend, and I'll tell you this quick story about this. He's in Auckland, lives in Botany. He gets cut and he gets septicemia, so he gets blood poisoning, right? He was out working inside the garden. Anyway, overnight he starts to swell. The poisoning is getting into his blood system. His wife takes him to the A&E. From the A&E, they take him to the hospital. He's in the A&E ward over there. No doctor has seen him for 3 hours, and he's literally sweating and he's coughing and he's really unwell. His wife then argues with the charge nurse and said, "You have to do something for my husband." She said, "Look, I'm sorry. The best thing you can do is to take him back out to the clinic, then get readmitted on another ambulance to come back in, and they'll see him." So she does. She takes him back out to the clinic. They then put him on an ambulance. It goes back in again. And then he goes back into the A&E. An hour later, finally a doctor comes, and they said, "Oh my gosh, we need to get you up to the operating theatre." Take him to the theatre. Post-operation, the doctor comes around to him and says, "You're really lucky. You could have died." Well, he hits the roof, as you can imagine anyone. And here's what he does. He gets on the phone, he rings the CEO of Te Whatu Ora and speaks to her because he was an ex-minister of health. He turned around and he said, "I do not believe what I've just witnessed," and said this, "Someone is going to die." They apologised and so forth. A week later, up in Auckland, in South Auckland, a woman died on the same conditions. And this is like nothing new. Now, I'm not saying this for us to be afraid of it. We should be concerned. And we should be concerned because what we've lived under in the last 3 years is this thing called centralisation, right, to the health system. Now we're no longer being able to honour the people that are in there. Bigger is not better for us. We're not providing localised approach. Up in West Auckland, where I come from, we've got Waitakere Hospital. We are a cottage hospital servicing a metropolitan area. In other words, it's like a small hospital, and yet we've got an area that services about nearly 350,000 people. We can't, the hospital can't, cope with this. Neither can the staff. Just really bad decisions that have been made, poor decisions that have been made. Isn't it amazing during COVID? Hello, we found money. In political terms, the Reserve Bank did a thing called quantitative easing, which in simple terms, what it means is this: you print money, right, to generate it into the economy, to generate this revenue and so forth, keep inflation down and so forth. But here's what happened. All we did was actually gain more debt. But don't you think you want to put it into the places where hospitals and saying, actually, we needed to actually have better health services? Oh, no, we don't. We waste money on all sorts of other things as well. So here's our belief. And the other thing too, because I used to be on the Auckland District Health Board, so I understand the health system around a governance perspective, and primary care is always most important. Why we're not getting the care into our communities so that it's easily accessible? Why are we also looking at our GPs, and we've got specialists not looking at what the GPs are providing? You know that at the moment we do not have enough trainee doctors that are coming through our training institutions. So here's what's going to happen. We're going to get stuck with a big problem. We're not going to have the workforce that we need. We've got nurses that are now already going over to Australia, and you know why? They get better pay, better conditions, and they can live a better life. You know, that's not going to help us.